Hi, I'm Katie and I'm writing a book. So today I'm talking a little bit more about what my book is actually about. So I got a comment on my first video, which thank you, definitely appreciate that, asking me to talk a little bit more about the actual what the book's about, the concepts, things like that, and kind of where the idea came from, those sorts of things. So I kind of struggle with this because I don't know how much I want to share. A lot of it because I don't know how much of this is going to change. I'm only in draft 1 right now. I didn't check, but I'm around 25,000 words. So still very much in draft 1. A lot of things could change. But, oh, and this is Happy. This is my cat Happy. He's very sleepy. So this is book 1 in a young adult, I don't want to say fantasy series, though it is fantasy, but it's fantasy in the way that, like, Percy Jackson is fantasy. You know, it's set in the real world, but there are elements of fantasy that are core concepts of the book. So it follows a group of friends, and the friends are 8th graders. They are 13, 14 years old. 3 girls, 1 boy. They find out that they have this unlikely connection, and this connection that they have is with this woman who is in her 60s at this point, and she has recently gotten out of jail, I guess prison, for the murder of another individual that the crime took place back in the 70s. So, of course, the kids were not alive in the 70s. This book is in 2005. So they don't actually know anything about Ruth. And that's the woman, that's her name, Ruth. But they all find out that they have this connection to her through this assignment that they get from school where they have to interview a relative. And all of their relatives end up telling them a story about Ruth. So first of all, they think it's so weird that all of their relatives are telling them a story about Ruth. Second part of that, they think it's weird that their relatives all have this positive story. These are all positive stories. And the family members still seem to have a positive association with Ruth. And what the kids know about Ruth up at this point is really only based on rumors that they've heard at school. There's a story that this is a woman who committed murder in their small town. And that's why these rumors started about her. That's why people say these negative things. I think the connection's weird. I think the positiveness is weird. But one of the main characters, and her name is Myra, this one main character, her name is Myra. She, for her relative interview, she didn't actually do an interview. She read journals from her deceased great aunt. In the journals, her deceased great aunt talks about Ruth as well as the person that Ruth is convicted of killing. And so Myra has this increased, intense desire to know more about Ruth because she wants to know why her family member adored Ruth, essentially, whenever she has done this horrible thing. And the deceased family member also adored the other person, the person that was killed. So they decide to dig a little deeper, ask some more questions, just dive right in. They're trying to figure it out, and they want to talk to Ruth. So they get to Ruth. That part's a little fuzzy. I gotta develop that. I know how they get there, but I gotta beef that up and figure out why certain things would happen that would lead them to be able to get there. Because, you know, obviously somebody's not just going to take a group of 13, 14-year-olds to go and talk to somebody who's been convicted of a serious crime like that. So I gotta get a little creative here and figure out that. But that's for me to figure out. That's not important right now. So, but with that, they meet her. She tells her side of the story, what happened, all of that. And basically what she tells them is that there's another layer of, oh, that's Daphne, another cat. There's another layer of this situation, a huge situation, not just a specific crime, but this situation. So essentially she reveals to them that they are part of this larger world slash, I don't know the word that I'm gonna use to describe this. I'm kind of fuzzy on some of that because I just don't know yet. But essentially they are all part of this bigger thing, and that is why they have the connection. That is how all of the family is related, not actually related like family related, but that's how they all have this connection to Ruth, because they're all part of this ability. So, and again, this is where it gets fuzzy. I gotta work on this system, essentially. But they all have powers, and again, I don't know that powers is gonna be the term I use, but they all have this power of, like, there's essentially gonna be, you know, powers that a character can have, and each of the main characters are going to have at least one. Kind of dig into that later, but, and Ruth kind of opens the door, and it's like, that's why you all have this connection, is because your families are part of this, you are a part of this, and I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you learn this, kind of figure out what you're doing. Very much like Percy Jackson, whenever he goes to Camp Half-Blood, and it's like, oh, now he's there, and now he's trying to figure out what's going on. That's kind of what happens to these. Thrown into this, and now they're like, what's going on? So they are satisfied with Ruth's story, and they're kind of now more focused on this new world, this new situation that they're in. And with that, part of this world are cryptids. So these cryptids are essentially human/animal creatures that are based on Appalachian folklore. So when I say that, I mean that they are inspired by Appalachian folklore. Not that they necessarily are that, but just that they're really inspired by that. So think like Mothman, the Loveland Frog. Those, if you're not familiar, really, the easiest way to explain is to just Google it. I don't mean that in like a Google it kind of way, just genuinely, I don't know how to explain any of that in a way that would be short enough to fit within this longer explanation of the video. So, so they're inspired by Appalachian cryptids, and the magic system is based on inspired by Appalachian traditions, like music, storytelling, like planting based on the phases of the moon, Farmer's Almanac, those sorts of things. So all of that's kind of wrapped up into this story. That's very, very important to the story. So the kids, they're learning, they're meeting some cryptids, because the cryptids in this world are just part of the world. They're not necessarily enemies, not necessarily friends. They're just essentially other people. They just happen to be cryptids and not just straight up humans. But with that, they find out that the cryptids also includes spirits. So they're kind of like ghosts. With that, they discover that they can connect with someone who has died, but they don't know how. You know, they're kids, they're just learning their powers, so they don't actually know how that works. But by meeting this spirit, they realize that that is a possible thing that can happen, because they've met somebody who is that. So something happens here at this part of the story, and they decide that they want to go straight to the source, which is Mary. I don't know if I said her name before, but Mary is the deceased great aunt of Myra, one of the main characters. And so they're like, why don't we just figure out how to talk to Mary directly? Because why would Mary lie to us? Because she's passed away. She doesn't really have a stake in the game, you know. She doesn't have a reason to lie. She's passed on. And she's also Myra's great aunt. So why would she lie to her family member? So the kids think this is a good idea. They try to do that, and they end up finding out some more information that does answer their questions that they've been looking for, but it opens the door into a much larger issue that would eventually lead into book 2 in the series as a whole. Oh, that was a lot. I don't know if that's the best description I could give. And like I said, a lot of it is blurry. A lot of it is fuzzy because I don't have a completed draft 1 yet. So a lot of this could change as I go. A lot of it could kind of just get tweaked a little bit there, a little bit there. But the main things that I know are not going to change are the concepts versus the plot points. So the way it all happens might change, but the core of the story will stay the same, that it's based on Appalachia, folklore, Appalachia, culture, those traditions, sorts of things. This family connection theme, friendship, all of that's going to stay very much, I don't want to say the same. Oh, he's taking a bath. I hope you cannot hear him taking a bath. Maybe you can. Have you be quiet. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, he's taking a bath again. Okay, whatever. So just a little bit more about where I got this idea from. So I am from Appalachia. I still am here in Appalachia. I love Appalachia. It's, of course, got pros and cons. It's got its flaws, just like everywhere else. But this story is very, very near and dear to my heart. But that is all very important to me, and that's why it's important to the story and how the idea came to me, I guess. Nothing was happening when I got this idea. It just one day just finally came along. It was about 2 years ago that I got this idea, and I didn't start draft 1 until March of this year. So it took me a while to get started, but now I feel like I'm getting somewhere. I guess that sums it up. A lot of it still could change. A lot of it I'm still figuring out. A lot of it is up in the air. There's a lot of course, there's a lot of characters other than the main characters that kind of make things interesting. But I think I'll leave it at that. I hope you liked learning a little bit more. I hope you didn't hear Happy giving himself a bath the whole time, but maybe you did. As I'm nearing the end of this, I'm realizing that the PlayStation has been on this whole time, which I knew because I can see the screen. I can see the TV screen, but I haven't heard the noise of the PlayStation because I hear the noise of the PlayStation all the time because that's how I play DVDs, is in the PlayStation. So I hope that's not too loud, and if it is, I'm sorry. Next time I will turn the PlayStation off. But yeah, that's what I'm working on. I don't think I'll get much more specific than that. Maybe I will. I don't know. But I'm going to leave it at that for now. Alright. Thanks for watching. My name's Katie. I'm writing a book. And I hope you'll stick around. Alright. Bye.